Thank you so much, Yvonne. And thank you so much, everyone. I see people still joining in on the call. So as we wait on a couple more people probably to join us, I'll just want to speak to one or two people. I would want some volunteers to just tell me who they are so that I can sort of get a glimpse or, an understanding of who is in the room. I won't point out anyone, but I just want one or two people to just introduce themselves to the broader team that is on this call. I'm assuming all of you know yourselves, but for my benefit. Heads up for those who introduce themselves, please know that I'll keep referring to you in the session. So you're setting yourself up. Anyone that wants to introduce yourself to me, because I know the call is going to have quite a lot of people, so we might not have a chance to introduce ourselves, all of us.
Good morning, Mr.
Hi, Shike.
My name is Jibodi Oluwa, and I am from Lagos, Nigeria.
Pleasure meeting you. Shike, if I can call you that, do you want to tell us one interesting thing about you? Please be careful because we are going to talk about privacy and security, so you might not want to share something very private, but please go for it.
Okay, one interesting fact about me is that I love to cook. I love to cook, try new dishes from different cultures.
Very nice. Very nice. Pleasure meeting you, Shike. Anyone else? Just one person, probably a male as well.
Okay, hello everyone.
Faith, yes.
Yeah, Faith Adeze is my name from Nasarawa State. I'm a volunteer, and also one interesting thing about me, I can be very, very sensitive to things around me.
Right. Pleasure meeting you, Faith. Anyone else? Just one last person before we can get into the session.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone.
Oh, two people. Yes, Ibrahim and then Abdullahi will go. Ibrahim, go for it.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Mariam Ibrahim Sani from Kano State, and I work with the Organization for Community Civic Engagement. One thing about me, I'm very flexible inside, but when you look based on appearance, I'm kind of very structured person.
Pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for joining. And then the last person, Abdullahi.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Abdullahi Olashukwu is my name. I'm a brand and product designer. I'm from Osun State. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I see we've gained more people, so I think it's a good time to get into it. So I have the pleasure to be joining all of you today to talk about issues of digital privacy, security, and first and foremost, I would want to first appreciate you all for the work that you're doing. I understand a lot of you are volunteers, and you're doing this work really outside of the official things that you do. And as someone who's coming from Kampala and understanding what that means for us in Uganda, I thank you so much for the work that you do. So today we're going to be talking about digital safety rights and privacy. Now, I understand all of you as volunteers and community members, you're doing critical work. And when I say critical work, I mean that you're doing work that might at some point, I don't want to use alarmist language, but it's important that you care about things to do with safety, rights, and privacy. Now, our session is just going to focus on that today, to kind of flesh out what are some of the things that many of you want to protect, but also the reason I was asking for you to kind of introduce yourselves is for me to kind of get an idea, where you're based, what you do, and how you're contributing to this. I don't know if I did that well, but I think I have good information. So I want to start us off with a question. Again, I would want us to do a very, very interactive session. I'm no expert. Some of you probably know about this topic more than I do, but I hope that you can share experiences and learn together through this journey. Either through the chat section or by unmuting yourself, I would want one or two people to speak to us about what's the one thing they fear about being online. The question is, what's the one thing you fear about being online? Yes, David, please just unmute yourself and speak. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things I'm afraid of about being online is how grossly unerasable some of our digital footprints are, right? And as we grow through life, sometimes when we were younger, we did some silly things on the social media, either through the things we wrote, even ideologically or so. And the way especially social media is structured, where your Instagram is logged in as the same as your Facebook, as your all the, for example, Meta stack. And if you delete it on this one, you might be surprised that it's not deleted on the other one. So digital footprint generally, and how the things we did when we were seemingly stupid can bite us back in the leg in the future. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well said, David. I think the internet doesn't forget. And of course, you mentioned very, very critical points around digital footprint and how sometimes it's hard to erase some of the things that we put online. 15 years ago, probably you were just a small boy who was just, reckless online. And then today you want to stand for senator or to, you're in a position, and then the internet doesn't forget all these things about you. So digital footprint, I hope that's something that we can talk about today. Thank you so much, David. There was another hand from I forget. Yes, Shike. Yes, go for it.
So one thing I fear about being online is the way if misinformation spreads. Like you can be talking about a different topic entirely, and somebody else might just pick out a point you say and take it in another way, and then people start bashing you for what you said, not even knowing the context of what you originally said.
Right. Very true, Shike. Thank you for sharing that. And I think there's a lot of connotations even on, and I'm glad that came from a lady. I hope I'm not misgendering you, but the misinformation aspect, we've seen that even for a lot of journalists, activists, there's been a lot of misinformation that has been targeted towards them, and sometimes it even takes the gendered aspect of it. So I hope that that's also something that we can talk about briefly. So allow me proceed. The last question, probably from someone who hasn't spoken to us, what's the one thing that you've done to stay safe online, or wish you had done to stay safe online? What's the one thing that, yes, Joshua?
Okay, good morning. My name is Joshua. I think one thing I've done to stay successful online is, one, apart from ensuring that when it's not needed, I don't on my location, because one thing I fear online is being tracked. So I don't on my location. Another thing that I do is to ensure that if it's not necessary, I don't write about it. If it doesn't cause, if it's not something I can stand for, I will not write about it.
Thank you, Joshua. Now, I picked two things from what you're saying, Joshua, and what Shike mentioned around, I think the initial question that Shike was responding to is, what do you fear about being online? And then what you're saying, for me, that takes my mind to censorship. Now, I understand that a lot of us here, some of us that do work, for example, journalists, or sometimes it's women, even men, really, sometimes you've seen that there's people that have decided to go offline, or even to censor themselves or to silence themselves because of the fear of repercussions that they might get because of their online activity, right? Now, that's a very, very not ideal thing for us to do as a people, but sometimes it's because of the circumstances, right? But we know that there's things that you could do to, simply beyond you, ejecting yourself from digital spaces, to just keep yourself safe. And I hope that we can get into those. Israel has shared that setting a two-step verification passcode for my social media account, beautiful, and then avoiding irrelevant or controversial discussions. I think that's a good start. So let's get to it. So what is on the menu today is what a lot of you have already said, and I know if we're to go on and kind of discuss how you keep yourselves online and some of the things that you fear about online spaces, I think some of these things would still come out. So in the next few minutes, I hope that we can talk about recognizing and responding to threats online, We can talk about privacy protection. We can talk about advocacy in a rights respecting way. We can talk about country-specific or regional legal context, specifically, of course, to Nigeria. And then we can also talk about the practical tools and resources. Now, this is very important around the practical tools and resources. And I would want us to get into an exercise at the tail end of this to sort of map out what are the support systems for, activists, volunteers like yourself that might be going into doing critical work and sort of bringing to light and documenting certain things that might be happening and going wrong and putting yourselves in danger. It's important to talk about, are there like digital security helplines? Are there support systems in your communities, or even further trainings that you could receive to place yourself, to better protect yourself as you do the work that you're doing, which is very, very important and critical work. Now, before we get into everything, I'd wanted to shine kind of a spotlight. What are some of the key cyber and digital rights laws in Nigeria? And I'm sure there's lawyers on here. So if again I have anything wrong, please feel free to jump in and correct it. But I think there's about 3 that I was able to point out, to pick out on, and some of them have, even through my work, we've been able to contribute to them with different partners like Paradigm Initiative, Media Agenda that I've interacted with before. So one is the Cyber Crimes Act, which has connotations of prohibition and prevention, which is one of Nigeria's main laws on cybercrime, which criminalizes hacking, identity theft, cyber stalking, distribution of harmful content, and online fraud. The second one is the Constitution. As amended, Section 39 guarantees freedom of expression online, including online. And then Section 37 guarantees the right to privacy, including of communications and personal data. The third one is the data protection laws. Nigeria's NADPA, the Nigeria Data Protection Act of 2023, which I know many of you have interacted with, establishes the Nigerian Data Protection Commission, which is supposed to be an independent entity that sets rules on how personal data must be collected, processed, and stored. And of course, the law gives individuals the right to know what data has been collected about them, to request deletion or correction of data, or even withdraw consent. I want to categorically talk about these 3 things. Now, as volunteers here, you are both data collectors, but also you're both data subjects. Now, the law speaks about any individual or any data subject must know what data is being collected about them. So in this context, as you collect data, maybe as volunteers, as you take pictures, as you document things, it's important to know that people must know what data is being collected about them. I know circumstances sometimes change and you're probably whistleblowing on certain things, but under very many circumstances, it's important that if you're collecting, especially people's personal data, things to do with names, etc., location, their family, you must inform them of what data you're collecting. But also they should have the right to delete this data or correct it, or even withdraw consent, right? For some of you that have done sexual reproductive health work, you know that even in that era, we say consent can be given and withdrawn at any point. Same applies to consent when using people's personal data. Now, I know we continue to see a lot of emerging technologies that collect our data without our oversight, right? But it's important still to know, what data you're giving to people when you're downloading an app, for example. We've had a lot of scenarios where it paints a clear picture of how the digital technologies that we use or in our day-to-day lives kind of jeopardize our privacy. I'll give you an example in the case of Roe versus Wade in the United States, where a very, very famous feminist technology app called Flow, I don't know if many of you know about Flow, which is an app that is used to, track menstrual health for ladies. This data was leaked. This data was being sold to a third party by this application, and in the process, because in this particular state they had criminalized abortion, we saw a lot of people being taken into custody and arrested and being charged for abortion because it was illegal in that state, simply because of data that the state had access to or was sold to a third party. Because with this data, for those that are using these apps, you would know that someone missed their their cycle this time around. So probably it's because they did an abortion and then they were criminalized. So in this day and era, we continue to give out a lot of our data to applications that we download Now there's a lot of apps that we use to track our activity, when you're jogging and how many miles and how many steps you've taken a day. We continue to see the development of a lot of mental health applications. So I'm just bringing this whole discussion to just bring into context around, how is our data being leaked these days and how we need to pay attention to. Are these apps giving me the right to delete my data? I'll give you an example that one of the border, I don't know if, I think we call that Okada in Nigeria. One of the Okada applications here in Uganda that we use to hail rides through an app. One time I wrote to them and I told them, I no longer need your services. I need to delete my data because I noticed that there wasn't an option to delete my data. And I said, I need to delete my data, but you're only giving me the option of uninstalling the app. And surprisingly, these people told me I needed to write to their offices in I think Switzerland, and I was shocked, right? So what this brings into context is everything to talk about, cross-border data flows and the protections of our data, which is exactly why the Nigeria Data Protection Commission is in place to ensure that the data of citizens is well protected. Moving on, I'm not going to go through this because I think we are time, but some of the risks that I've seen from my end and the people that I've worked with, especially activists, people that are doing critical work, has been criminalization of speech, where we continue to see state surveillance and monitoring of social media platforms, especially of activists or journalists or people that are doing critical work. Arrests for critical tweets, blogs, or comments. And I know I can't speak much about this because in Nigeria, you've also it happen. There's been several cases like this. We've also seen activists and journalists facing charges like cyber stalking, publishing false information, which I think Shike spoke about earlier on, account hacking and takeovers, online harassment. These are all risks that we continue to face. So let's talk about digital security and safety. I'm going to rush through this, but please feel free to interrupt me at any point. I would appreciate it to add a point to what I'm going to say or to, to correct me if you feel like I've misrepresented something. Now, speaking about surveillance, which is a privacy issue or a digital security issue, there's two main reasons anyone, I'm using the word people, would want to breach our digital lives. And this is why I asked the question around earlier on what's the one thing that you fear about being online, right? So one of the reasons is profit making, and the other reason is surveillance. Some people would want to breach a digital life for a reason of profit making, right? And then some people would want to do it for reasons of surveillance. Now, these two are not mutually exclusive. We know that people could be companies, could be governments, could be security services, could be individual hackers, could be organized crime groups, old friends, or even partners. It's, of course, we know very well that a lot of the online gender-based violence cases that we've been dealing with, even GBV offline, have been through intimate partners. So this is the two main reasons that why people would want to breach your digital lives. And of course, for people that do it for profit making, their intentions are not, sometimes might not be, they're untargeted, right? Yes, slides will be shared. So the untargeted, people that do untargeted surveillance, most of the times the motive is usually profit making, right? And a lot of these is what all of us are subjected to by especially big technology companies. I normally give people examples of how you can have a conversation with your friend, or you Google something about, maybe you have a child or something, you're interested in something, and you Google best Pampers. Before you know, you go to your Instagram or Facebook, and there's all these ads about Pampers. So that's social engineering. So that's untargeted surveillance, but sometimes, a lot of the times, it's not dangerous because the motive is profit making, where these systems speak to each other and share data to give you a good experience. But a lot of us, of course, could translate that as surveillance. Then the targeted surveillance, a lot of the times the motive is surveillance. They just want to track you, which is also common, especially state-led surveillance. So speaking about digital safety, we know that security and digital safety and security does not exist as a binary. You can't qualify as either safe or not safe. A lot of us sometimes say, oh, I can't put a password in my phone because I have nothing to hide. Is there anyone else that has had that statement before? I've had people say it so much that, oh, I have nothing to hide, that's why I don't use this password, or I don't do this. And I think for someone to make such a statement is like someone saying, I don't care about free speech because I have nothing to say. Or I don't care about freedom of expression because I have nothing to say. And I want to emphasize this because at this point, everyone literally has something to lose, because it's not even just about you. Your security and your safety and security sits on the spectrum. Why? Because when someone hacks your phone, Yvonne or Faith or Shike or Ibrahim, you're literally endangering your whole family, your spouse or your children or your mother or your father, because that's how hacking works. Someone could just get through you because you're the weak point, but simply what they're trying to get to is your partner. So when you talk about, oh, I have nothing to hide, it's not even just about you. It's this ecosystem that you're all part of, that as volunteers, maybe we are using online platforms to communicate with GovVote or CC Hub, and that your hacker knows that when they get through Oriomi's phone, they can definitely get into somewhere, somehow, get into Yvonne Eweka's his email or system. You understand? So I just wanted also to put that straight. So the tips presented in this training, of course, are the bare minimum. I want us all to think about digital safety and security as a daily shower and not just a few house repairs, right? It's something that you're supposed to practice on a daily basis to avoid putting yourself in danger. So I asked part of these questions earlier on, and these are things I want you to ponder on in your mind. What do I want to protect, right? As a person, even before you're a volunteer, right? What do you want to protect? Because sometimes we do this work and it can even infiltrate our personal lives, right? Again, forgive me if I'm using very, scary language. That's not my intention, but I understand that some of the context that some of you have to work in could be dangerous, right? You could be whistleblowing, you could be holding people accountable, holding powerful people accountable, and kind of whistleblowing on a lot of things that could put you in danger. So think about, what do I want to protect? What are my assets, right? Both physical and digital assets, but most importantly, what are some of the digital assets that you want to protect? Who do I want to protect it from? Is it the government? Is it your spouse? Is it, who do you want to protect these things from? How bad are the consequences if I don't protect myself, or if I don't protect these threats, if I don't protect my assets, right? How bad could the consequences be? And then the last one is, how much trouble am I willing to go through to prevent potential consequences? And when we talk about trouble, is, am I even willing to pay for sort of, paid subscription for a lot of things that we use, like VPNs? A lot of us use free VPNs, not knowing the danger that we're putting ourselves into. And I hope that CC Hub and GovVote have thought about providing you volunteers with paid subscription of VPNs. I think that's something that Yvonne, we are able to support you with policy, because we have a lot of those. Because I think as people go out to do this work, it's important that they keep themselves anonymous. VPN support us with surveillance. So as you step out, how much trouble are you willing to go through to protect yourself from these consequences? Let's talk about securing device. So again, this is information that many of you have interacted with, so I'll rush through it, but feel free to jump in if you have a question. A link you are made to click. That's the way that you could be hacked. A file that you're made to download and open through email or through WhatsApp. We've seen a lot of us that have been sent things and you open them or you download them, and before you know, they've taken over your WhatsApp. Now they're communicating to your family members, or you see a message saying that KFC is making 100 years, click here to win a bucket of chicken. Have you seen those? Or, so-and-so is Toyota is making 100 years, click here to win a car. So a lot of those things that, phishing. And then the other way that you can be hacked is what we call zero-day attacks, zero-click attacks. So many of us don't update our phones or don't update our apps because we feel like it's too expensive. But what happens is that when Google or App Store or Instagram or Facebook, whatever you're using, when they sense a security weakness, right, in their system, because there are people that are paid to, test penetration testing, I think that's what you call them, to test the security of some of these systems. When Facebook realizes that there's a security vulnerability, they work on it and then provide you with an update, right? And many of you ignore those updates. Now, between when that vulnerability is realized and when you update your phone is what we call a zero-click period, because hackers use this period to utilize that vulnerability to hack people's phones, right? So that's why it's important for you to keep your phone and your apps updated. Through unsecure Wi-Fi networks, I can guarantee you, and I know the stake is here, that whether you're at work, whether you're at the airport and you're using free Wi-Fi or open Wi-Fi, there's someone who can actually track your activity online, right? And if they mean harm, they can tell. Your boss can tell that you're looking for a new job. Or sometimes they can access what sites you're going to, etc. Which is why a lot of these public Wi-Fi's, maybe you might not be able to get to certain platforms or certain websites because they have control over that. Then malicious USBs that you insert in your websites going into malicious websites and reckless use of your devices. So this is what the zero-click exploits that I've been explaining, but I might not go into it. But the period when a vulnerability is realized in a device or in a platform until when you update your phone is a dangerous period, because that can be utilized by hackers to do quite a lot of things and to get into our systems. Spyware, I'm not going to speak about spyware so much, but I think spyware, what you must know is also harmful ware that is installed in our devices to spy on us. So it's also a privacy aspect. How do we access spyware? Is by utilizing unofficial softwares that we download off the different sites. Clicking on the links, the dangerous links. Through those links, you can have spyware installed in your phone. I'm going to give you an example. I didn't want to use examples from Nigeria or anywhere close, to not, implicate anyone or even put company names out there. But I'm going to give you an example from the Middle East of Omar Abdelaziz, who received an SMS that contained a link. And upon clicking it, it downloaded Pegasus on his phone. Now, I don't know if Nigeria has had scenarios of Pegasus, but in Uganda, we've had a lot of journalists and activists whose phones have been compromised by Pegasus, right? So it is through messages like this that you're not sure about. Someone sends a message saying, please go and change your password. And I know all of us have interacted with these messages. That spyware is installed in our phones, and that's how the journey of surveilling on us starts. We also have, the human rights defender, Ahmed Mansour, who was compromised through the same format. Now, I talked about something earlier on that when we talk about privacy and security, it's not even just about you, because maybe you do have the information, but does your wife do? Does your friend do? Does your mother do? Does your father do? Do your siblings do? Because there's people that you interact with on a daily basis. A lot of us have our phones and devices linked to each other, to our family members, to our workmates and everything. So every time you compromise yourself or putting yourself in a situation like that, clicking on malicious links, you're not only endangering yourself, but rather endangering a lot of people around you. What can you do? If there's anything that you don't take away from this presentation, update your apps and operating systems, test your devices for malware and spyware regularly, scan all links and attachments, and we're going to look at Virus Total, which can help us scan links before we click on them. If you suspect, of course, that this might be malicious or that someone is after you, you could use that tool. Then activating lockdown. I think for iOS, for those that are using the iOS, there's this option to activate the lockdown mode. Limit the amount of data on devices and regularly do backups. A lot of us that exist in physical offices, we tend to keep a lot of private information on our desktops without having to back it up or using cloud services. Again, the conversation on whether cloud services are safe is a conversation for another day. But I think for people that live in regimes that do a lot of surveillance, even in Uganda, we've had cases where entities are broken into people's offices and they've taken away the computers. So you're losing everything that you own. But even beyond that, as an individual, if you have a phone and it does everything, so that means if you lose your phone, you're losing all the information, all the data that you possess. We've seen applications also setting up things like setting disappearing messages. These are tools that are supposed to help with privacy and security. Covering front cameras. If you have a laptop, you should be able to do this and this, right? So covering your front camera, it's important because a lot of the surveillance happens through these cameras. They can be hacked. And before you know, someone is watching you while you're at home simply because you've left your camera open. So when you cover your camera. There's always, these things that you can use. Moving on. I think we've talked about this. Do not delay your updates because that can be utilized as a vulnerability. What are the symptoms of an attack? How do you know that probably, I'm being surveilled or I have spyware or, I've been attacked? Sometimes our phones drain quickly, and I know some of us, of course, do have phones that have weak batteries. But if your battery drains quickly, it's important that you think about the possibility that you have spyware, installed in your phone or you're being surveilled or something. Then apps behaving suspiciously. If you see your apps dancing, that's not what it means, but your apps are, behaving suspiciously. Abnormal data usage, your internet is, depleting very fast. You've received a suspicious link or attachment and you clicked on it. Camera opening without user prompt. And when I say camera opening, I think a lot of us have laptops where if your camera is on, there will be a light. It's normally a green light or a red light. So those are things to look out for that could potentially show you that you've been attacked. And then sometimes for people that are using iOS, sometimes you'll receive a notification from Apple. So it's important to scan everything, right? Journalists, human rights defenders need to open links and files from, need not to open links from unknown sources all the time, right? Get in the habit of scanning everything you receive, every link and file that you receive. So there's a platform called VirusTotal. I'll quickly just show it here. And if I can share my screen. Here it is. So I don't know if you can see my screen. So there's a platform called a system called VirusTotal. If you can see my screen. So with VirusTotal, you can scan anything that you think is malicious. So you can upload a file before you probably open the file. I know sometimes when you download the file, it's already compromised. So, but also you can scan. You can put a URL link that you don't trust. If you think that this might be a malicious link and you're not sure, you can upload it here and search, and then VirusTotal should be able to tell you that this is a dangerous link. The other thing that you can talk about is danger zone. And I'll put all these links in the chat section so that you can try them out. Okay. I think I'll just show you screenshots in the near future. So these are some of the things that you can use to scan files before you open them. So this is VirusTotal. And of course, when I do share this presentation with you, I think a lot of you can test it out, but I've already given that to you. So I'll just put it in the chat section here. So this is VirusTotal that you can use to, check if this is a phishing link or it's a malicious link. And then danger zone. I'll also put it in the chat section right away. Okay, so feel free to test those out as we move along. I've talked about activating lockdown mode. For a lot of you that have iOS device, this application is available, or this option is available on your phone. So please look for it and turn it on. You should be able to set, maybe probably how much after how many attempts should the lockdown mode be activated. Okay. Other tips that you can consider the amount of data that you're keeping on your device to avoid being compromised. But even when you're compromised, that the hacker doesn't get to access a lot. And the only way that you can do this is regularly backing up or even removing data, pictures, files, and chats that might put you in danger. Enabling disappearing messages whenever you're discussing sensitive information. It's a feature available on many messaging apps. But also, most importantly, we know that there's apps that are safe and have but we'll talk about that later. Of course, covering your camera. Some of you might consider getting a second mobile, especially for work, to separate it from your private life. Okay. So all these are available for you to be able to test, but allow me to rest through. So let's talk about securing online traffic. I think I was talking about VPNs and encryption earlier on, and I was saying that for those that are doing sensitive communications, there's applications that like Signal that are definitely encrypted, and then a lot of other applications that we use, I know they mention that they're encrypted, but we know that they're not. So your information can still be accessed. Now, can someone attempt to explain to us what encryption is in a layman's language? Any technical person that might be able to break that down very well? When you see a message on your WhatsApp saying, encryption, end-to-end encryption has been activated, what does that mean? Samuel?
It means that you protected that message from a third party.
You're saying the messages are protected from a third person, right?
Yes. So it means that
Okay.
the chats can only be visible between, can only be visible to, can be only be visible to you and whoever you're chatting with. The third person
Thank,
cannot.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Samuel. Thank you so much, Samuel. Sean, I don't know if I'm reading right. Please go on. Your hand is up.
Okay. Like what encryption means is if I have a readable text, like something that can be read, like communicating with another person, it will be converted, encrypted into something that could not be read by any other third party, like converting a readable text into unreadable text. My dear sir.
Thank you so much. That's exactly it. Abdullahi, you have something to add to that?
Okay, yes. Encryption simply means that turning your information into secrets using a secret code so that only the right person you give access can read it.
Exactly. That's it. I don't want to add much to that. I'm also going to add an example. I don't know if we have Gen Zs and young people here, but when we're still in school and you wanted to write to a girl that you are probably dating in another class and you didn't want the teacher to find out, there's something that we used to do where you used to write 143 on a paper, because even if a teacher intercepted that paper that had 143, because they are older people, they might not understand what it exactly means. But you as a student and as you as a person and the person you're communicating to, you would know. So what we would write on the paper would be 143, right? 1 stands for I love you, because it's 1 letter. And then love is 4 letters, so it's 4, LOV, and then U is 3. Now that's a typical example of encryption. That it's only you, the sender and the receiver of the information, that can read the message. But anyone in between will simply see letters that do not make sense. That's exactly what encryption is, right? So I want to explain that further. So when we talk about encryption, the whole point of encryption is securing online traffic, because there's a lot of people that are lurking around trying to hack your online communication. Also in this day and era where you're talking to your family, you're talking to your boss, and everything that we do is online, banking and everything, it's important that we care about securing our online traffic. Yeah? And the only way we can do that is to look at encryption, using apps that are encrypted, but also pay attention to, what are the encryption levels. And I know that in some areas and regions, encryption is set by law that all apps and platforms must have the encryption aspect. So without encryption, when you're communicating to your loved one or your boss or your workmate, you'll send a message called hello, and the people operating the masts or the network will be able to, if they wanted, they would be able to read that message. The people operating the servers, if they wanted, they would be able to read that message. And same applies to the other person, whether they are using MTN or whatever network they're using, they should be able, whoever is intentional about reading your message in between here before you send, between when you send it to the person you're sending it to and when it reaches, they can be able to read that information. Now, with some encryption, sometimes email, Telegram, Instagram DMs, Twitter DMs, it is said that they have a bit of encryption. They have certain level of encryption. What that means is that you send a hello, the person operating the network won't be able to see the message that you're saying. They'll be able to see certain digits that don't make sense. But the people operating the server might have, to some level, be able to access this information, and then until it gets to the person that you're sending into. Now, with end-to-end encryption, with platforms that we know like Signal, WhatsApp, I'm not sure. I detest WhatsApp because I'm not quite sure that it's fully end-to-end encrypted. If there's a professional that can convince me, I'm happy to hear you out. But I think I would recommend Signal because I know that they have full encryption. From when you send a message to when it reaches the recipient, no one can read the contents of your message. I rush through it. Same applies for HTTPS. I think talking about accessing malicious websites, we know that the only safe website to access is one that has HTTPS, not just HTTP, because that we know that in this day and era, people can clone websites. So someone can send you a link that shows you're actually visiting CC Hub website, when everything looks exactly like CC Hub. The only thing that would be missing is the S aspect, right? Now, if you're accessing websites that don't have the S aspects, the HTTPS, this is how it means that your information can be accessed by whoever is managing the system. Now, this is when you're accessing it through HTTPS. Now, all these things are talking about securing our traffic online. So you should pay attention to which websites you're visiting and make sure that they have HTTPS, right? And now connecting through VPN. This is what happens when you connect through VPN, right? VPN, what VPN literally does is anonymize you or even change your location. That's why a lot of us that use, for example, paid VPNs, I think even free VPNs, which I don't recommend, you get to choose a server that you'd want to be placed at, right? So what this means is that you have a level of protection, especially with the person manning, you know, the system or the server system or your IT person, and then the person manning the ISP. They're not able to identify what information you're communicating online or even place you exactly where you are, right? That's how VPNs work. And then there's Tor. Now, I don't know if many of you have interacted with Tor, but Tor is a community really that's a security community, especially it has products and tools that a lot of advocates, activists use to protect themselves online. The difference with Tor is that your communication goes through multitudes of servers, goes through very, very many servers before it gets to the person you're communicating to. So what that means is that if someone needed to hack your communication, they would need to go through all these very many servers. Fortunately, these servers are manned by private individuals. Now, that shouldn't scare you because there's volunteers across the world that are manning the Tor servers with the sole goal of making sure that we continue, or activists or people doing critical work continue to communicate in safe ways. So even the individuals that are manning these servers don't have access, because even for them to access this information, they'll need to go through a whole lot of system to access. So I recommend using Tor products. And there's a lot of them. There's a Tor browser, just like any other browser, Chrome, Firefox, Safari that you might use, except the Tor browser does not expose your traffic. So if you know you're doing critical work or doing critical research or doing a lot of critical things, please consider using the Tor browser, which allows you to access the internet anonymously without traffic surveillance. And I'll quickly also put the link in the chat section for those that are interested in exploring the Tor browser right away. Okay, moving on. Sorry, I'm rushing through this because I see our time is quickly running out. Tor also has a OBOT. Now, the Tor browser protects your online traffic, but we know that there's also information and traffic that is through apps, right? So OBOT routes mobile apps traffic through Tor, and you can select specifically which app to run through Tor. So we have all these apps like WhatsApp, Twitter, and etc. If you're not sure about the security, or if WhatsApp is telling you there's end-to-end encryption and you're not sure about it, you can decide that all your WhatsApp traffic goes through the OBOT app, and that way all your WhatsApp traffic will be secured. And I'm also going to put that in the chat section right away for those that are interested. Okay, quickly moving on. Let's talk about securing accounts. I might not dwell so much on this because I know lots have been about of trainings that talk about securing accounts. So several popular websites are often hacked, e.g. Facebook, Microsoft, and hackers get access to passwords, emails, phone numbers, etc., and leak them online for free or a small amount of money. It was either you or someone who spoke about earlier. I think it was, I'm sorry, I forget who it was. I think they've actually left the call. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is a lot of us, when we're using these platforms, we simply log in with Facebook or log in with your Gmail or log into this account with your Gmail. Now, this is problematic because that means if your Gmail is compromised, then a lot of these platforms that you use to log in using your Gmail will also be compromised, right? And I'm happy to show you how that exactly works. So if you go to this website called Have I Been Pwned, and I'm going to ask that any volunteer that would want to give us their email to see, because what we do, this is how you check if you've been pwned. What we do is, let me just share my screen. A minute. So there's this website called Have I Been Pwned? Let me also put it in the chat section. So a lot of us have these emails that we say, log in with my email, or sign up with my email. Let me, for example, give you an example of an email that I used to use a couple years ago. Let's check it if it has been compromised. So this platform will show you that your email has been in three data breaches, right? This email address has been found in multiple data breaches. Review the details below to see where your data has been exposed. So I must have signed up with my email on Gravata, and the data that was compromised was my email address, username, names, and usernames. Then Canva, which I know many of us use, it compromised my geographic location, names, passwords, and usernames, because I signed into Canva using my email. So if my email is compromised, then it means that these are compromised. But also if Canva is compromised, because for example, they're saying in May 2019, the graphic design tool website Canva suffered a data breach that impacted 137 million subscribers. What this means is because you signed up to Canva using your email, then your email was also compromised, right? Which is why we recommend that you do not sign up onto platforms using your Gmail, because that increases your level of vulnerability. And feel free, is there anyone that would want to share their email and we try it out? No pressure. Anyone?
Yeah, let me try. Yeah, let me try.
Has anyone else tried it? Maybe you can share what your results have been. Or anyone wants me to try out their email to test it out? Yvonne, go for it.
So do I need to share my email with you on the chat?
I mean, if you're comfortable with it.
Okay.
You can share your email and then I can put it in and we see if you've been compromised. Okay, Ibrahim has sent. Please, you're putting yourself in danger, because if you have been visiting any platforms that are not, we'll get to see that.
So it's an email I don't use regularly, so it's fine.
Okay. So Miriam, sorry, was that Miriam?
Yes, it's Miriam.
Yeah, Ibrahim. Yes, Mariam. Yes.
Yeah.
So Mariam's email has been in one data breach, and that specific data breach was on a platform called C2Day, I think. I don't know if but so your information that was compromised is your email addresses and your passwords. So what you might want to do is already detach your email from that platform, and you can go to your Gmail under settings, and then you can, detach it, or you change your password for that platform, right?
Okay,
there's another person that sent their email. Yvonne, let's just start with Yvonne. Yvonne, you've been in 3 data breaches. I don't know which platform this is, because it also appeared on Mariam's thingy, but also 2844 breaches, a massive collection of almost 3,000 alleged data breaches found online, and then Netlog. Yeah. So that's how you've been compromised. Anyway, I just wanted to point that tool to you to test how things are looking like for you if you've been compromised. Moving on, I'm so tempered, so I'm going to rush through all these. I'm not going to talk about hacking so much, but let's talk about passwords. I think it's been told to all of you that you need to have a secure password, but also you can always tell whether you have a strong password. So if you go to how secure is my password, that platform. Sorry, I'll switch between platforms. I'm just going to share my entire window. I don't know if that's safe. So if you go to this, okay. So if you go to this platform, you can test how strong your password is. Let me say, a lot of us, our passwords are, your daughter's name or your mother's name and your birthday. So let's say Yvonne 1992. If that's your password, Yvonne, it means it will take 42 minutes for someone who is intentional to crack that password, right? And anyone else you could try out to test your password. Now, a lot of people, of course, keep saying, but I can't use my actual password. Even if you use your actual password, the no one would know who you are and probably use it, but try it out. And then the other one is Password Monster that I think we can try out to test the strength of our passwords. So this one, the good thing tells you that because we know that your password, a strong password should have lowercase, uppercase, numbers, and symbols. So let's try it. Let me use the strong password like this. So the password that I've used is this. It has lowercase, uppercase, numbers, symbols, and it will take 131 billion years to crack this password, right? So if you need to test your password in the spirit of talking about which is a safe password to use, I think that would be a good place for you to start. Okay, moving on. There's a lot of tools that we could test out, but I think we might have to just continue for the purpose of time. So the recommendation is that you move from using passwords to phrases, right? So if you have, you maybe think about a favorite song that you like. If it's Nakolabo, I don't know who sang that one, but I know it's from Nigeria. You think about a line from that song and use that line, right? Or think about a line in your local language, right? Or think about something in your local language, because that is something that hackers won't be able to figure out, okay? So those are some of the tips of things that we could actually use. Password managers, definitely. So there's a lot of password managers that you can use, because a lot of people say, oh, I have very many platforms, so I can't keep chroming each password. So with a password manager, you only need to remember one master password, and then you should be able to recall all your passwords. Then phishing, I think we've talked about phishing. I've told you, just like people fish, going to, you have a bait. So the bait this time around could be that KFC is making 100 years, click here. So that's phishing. That could also put us in danger. Two-factor authentication, please make sure that you set up two-factor authentication across your platforms, that even when someone compromises your password, they'll still need to probably get an OTP, a one-time password, to be able to access your platforms. On Twitter, you can set that up. On WhatsApp, you can also set it up. Yeah. So there's a way you can routinely also check your login activity to just be sure that no one is compromising your account, to make sure that you're safe. Seeking support, I think this is going to be my last phase. I thought I would also talk about data privacy and we'll do an activity, but time is out. So I would also want to make time for questions and a bit more. So I have a question, and this is something that I thought we'll talk about jointly. What are some of the support systems and digital security helplines that exist in Nigeria? That, if you had a digital security, issue, where would you go? Let's try to map those out quickly. You can either put it in the chat section or you send it, or you unmute yourself and speak up. Anyone? Do you know of any digital security helplines or organizations that can help you if you've been compromised digitally in Nigeria? Okay, I can mention some organizations if none of you know. I'll start with the CC Hub. I don't know if that's support that CC Hub can provide, but we know organizations like Paradigm Initiative. I know many of you have interacted with them. We know organizations like, I think, Engage Media. I think I would advise that all of you go ahead and look out for those organizations and entities that are able to provide support, digital security help support right away in Nigeria. But if you don't find any, we have regional digital security helplines that especially provide support to journalists, activists, volunteers like yourself. If you've lost an account, if your Twitter account or your WhatsApp or your email or whatever platform you use has been compromised, you can reach out to Access Now, and I'll put that in the chat section. And then they can be able to support you. Oh yes, CC Hub has a help desk, I'm told. So yes, please utilize that. Then we have Frontline Defenders. I think those are the two that are easily accessible across the African continent. So please keep them on your radar if you feel like your devices have been compromised and you need support. The additional resources that I can point us to is Security Education Companion, Security in a Box by Frontline Defenders, and then staying safe online in the context of the conflict in Gaza. Of course, that might not be very useful to us, some of us. But also, policy has created some games that, again, a lot of times this information is hidden because the language is hard to tell. So we developed a game called Digital Safety, and I will put it in the chat section here. Now, this game, you can play it with your mother, grandmother, children, your friends, to just learn about digital security in a much more fun way. Because I know many of you might be thinking, oh, I need to make a presentation, or I need to speak to my people about this. But the easiest way that you can do that is by playing that game. It has about 3 personas that you can check out that flesh out how, what are some of the everyday digital security challenges that we might encounter, and what can you do about it, right? For example, there's a scenario of a social media officer in a certain NGO who gets a notification that someone is trying to hack into the organization accounts. And then they are given 3 options: to change the password, to contact the platform, or to remove the phone battery and throw it away. And I know, even on here, even in other spaces, some people would say that I would remove the phone battery and throw it away, but that doesn't counter the threat that someone is trying to hack you. So again, that game shows you how exactly you're supposed to, for example, change your password, what is a good password, and very many other scenarios that you can test out, everyday scenarios that we face while using the digital spaces. The other game that I will refer you to is called Choose Your Own Fake News. I know someone earlier on, I think it was Faith, I don't remember, talked about the issue of misinformation, and fake news online. So also, I know many of you have family WhatsApp groups where you have that one auntie who keeps forwarding you those messages, on what you need to do. And I think this was very common in COVID, but you might not have the way to speak to them about what can I do? Because honestly, they don't mean harm. And I think that's what we call misinformation. I think misinformation, the difference between disinformation and misinformation is the intent. That there's people that spread wrong information when their intention is really about tarnishing your name. They have bad intentions, right? But also there's people that share wrong information when they don't have bad intentions, which is a lot of our aunties and mothers and grandfathers who keep forwarding us these messages that are scary because they read them somewhere and they think it's... So with such people, you can also talk about this, because I think it's such populations that also contribute to the ecosystem of spreading misinformation, which could affect us, right? Because again, we talked about how the internet doesn't forget. So those are tools that I'll recommend to you. And then the others, of course, are in the resource that I'll be sharing with all of you. I beg to first pause here. You want to, hear from anyone that has questions or has further contributions.
All right, thank you so very much. So we are open for questions. If you have any question, please raise up your hand so that we can take it. Please, let's celebrate our facilitators. Thank you so much, all the way from Uganda. We are enjoying this session in Nigeria and all over the different states where we are joining from. I have learned so much. I have been writing and all that. I'm going to check out some of these links after the trading. So I hope we are going to do the same also. So for me, Philip, my question would be, as a social development professional and one who deals with a lot of tools in terms of engaging community, how do I ensure that I'm staying safe online and at the same time respecting the rights of people? So I'll give an example. If I were to organize a physical program and I'll be collecting people's data, how do I get them to consent to sharing those data just for informational purposes? For instance, their pictures and all that, because also we are not using any digital tool for the registration. We are doing manual registration. If it were to be using maybe an online form, there will be a space for them to consent before submitting. But how do we navigate a situation where it is a physical event and we want to get the consent of the people so that we can share data from that event for, information purposes on our social media? And I think this is a question it's sort of burdensome in my mind.
Yeah, thank you, Yvonne, for that. Such a good question, and I think it's relevant to a lot of us that run organizations that are on here that are running their individual initiatives. So, data protection, right? I think the thing that I can talk about that is that for all the rights that you're talking about, rights, freedom of expression, the right to privacy, the right to all these things that you're talking about, the digital rights, for every right, there's a responsibility, right? So a lot of us, of course, keep looking at, oh, I have a right to do this, but also you forget that you also have a responsibility. So speaking about the right to privacy or data protection, right? Whereas Yvonne, you have a right to privacy, but also you have a responsibility to protect the privacy of other people. Now that takes me to your question, right? A lot of us collect data at events, do research and do all these things, and we collect people's private information, whether they've consented or not, because I know that the culture of consent is also not yet well engraved in our communities. Sometimes we collect people's data without getting their consent, but also sometimes they might not ask what this data is for, because probably you're giving them a token or some few nairas, and then they'll just accept, right? But we need to get ourselves in a place where we understand consent, but also give enough information to the people that you're collecting data from. But beyond that, we have a responsibility as organizations to use people's data for the reason that they gave us that data, because it's one of the principles of data protection, right? Which I know that they're also in the Nigeria data protection. But before I get to that, Yvonne, I think I've answered your question a bit, but I'm going to answer it in detail in 5 minutes. We have a problem that as part of a data management life cycle, even when you've gotten consent and you finish using the data and processing it and doing it for whatever you wanted to use it for, and you've stored it, after you've finished using this data, I don't know who has been to Uganda. There's a very famous delicacy called Rolex. I don't know if Yvonne, I think you've had a Rolex, which is chapati and eggs, you know? Now,
Yes.
sometimes you might go to the street to buy street food or even buy chips or whatever that you're buying on the street, and then your packaging of your food is someone's HIV results, or is someone's academic documents, or it's someone's bank statement. Now, the question that we should ask ourselves is, how does that information get to the mama or the papa who is selling these things on the streets? It's because the people that collected this data didn't take the initiative to care about data protection. That's why I know that as part of the data protection law in Nigeria and the commission, it's important, and I'm sure that it's a requisite for organizations, as required by the commission, to have a data protection officer in the organization, someone who is charged to making sure that we continue to protect people's individual data. But also that's why we have like data protection policies that staff should be able to understand and say, okay, if I'm Yvonne and I've collected the data of the volunteers for the purposes of, maybe an upcoming activity, but then I open up a thrift shop online and I have an Instagram account, is it legal for me to get all these contacts, phone numbers, and use them for my personal business as Yvonne to send them SMS saying we have nice dresses at 5K or we have nice dresses at 1K? Is that the reason that you collected this data? Because I think that's where we get things wrong. So to answer your question is, I think institutions also have to recognize the responsibility that they play in as much as protecting people's privacy. So beyond speaking about these things, we should also put in place systems and procedures in organizations to ensure that we protect people's data. But still on that question, we normally talk about data protection and privacy, as two different things, as related but also different things. Now, the difference between data protection and privacy is two things. It's just on the screen. I don't know if anyone can interpret what is on the screen, but I'll give you an example to help you interpret it. Now, all of us stay in houses here, right? Now, your house has a door and it has a window. What do we call that? That is protection. Why do you go ahead and buy curtains for your house or set up blinds for your house? It's for privacy. If we didn't care about privacy, or if privacy wasn't an actual thing, we would have been building houses and not putting curtains and simply closing the window and putting the padlock and we go to sleep. But because there's also privacy, that's why we put blinds and curtains and all these things that we get to put in the houses. Now, similar to the context of data protection, and in this case, I would think that the phone is the data that the person is trying to protect. With protection, you have an umbrella over your head, but still somehow, somewhere, the rain can get to your device or even to you as a person. With privacy, you provide full-on security for the data. Now, practically, that means that, okay, my phone has a password, right? But I'll go ahead and set up two-factor authentication. That is privacy, data privacy. That my WhatsApp or my bank account has a password, but I'll go ahead and set up two-factor authentication. That is privacy. So I wanted to point that out. And then I'm going to speak about principles of data privacy. But maybe before I do that, let's speak about where is our data, okay? What are some of the places that we need to pay attention to? Or even as an African community, where is our data? Where is our data being compromised? There's a lot of fintech apps, and I know this is not also, because in Uganda we have a lot of mobile loan sharks, people that are giving out loans. Now, with these mobile loans, we've had scenarios where you've been contacted saying, hello, Yvonne, please tell Samuel or Adebayo to pay their loan. And I'm like, how? Because a lot of us, when you download these apps, you give the app access to your contacts, and then they are able to access and know who do you talk to on a daily with someone that accesses you. Now, that's also something that we need to pay attention to. A lot of us have phones, and then you download an app and just accept without reading. And of course, these terms and conditions can be long. And these are things that we're advocating for, that even organizations should simplify their terms and conditions for people to be able to understand. Because as they are, if I'm downloading an app to probably, use a platform and you're giving me privacy conditions or terms and conditions that are 12 pages, I'm not going to read them. But also, how about you start providing options for translating terms and conditions so that people know what they're signing up for? So we need to pay attention to these things. Even in your phone, you need to go and check what applications have access to my location, because some of the applications are surveilling you. Why should my calendar, or why should my weather app, all of us have that weather app, why should it access my contacts? Or why should this app access this information? Why should this app access my camera, right? So these are things that you need to pay attention to. I've talked about recycled packaging, that a lot of us collect data, and after using the information, we simply throw in the dustbin, and then people come and pick them up and then make paper bags that they pack food in. These are scenarios that we continue to see in our countries. That is also your data. Then cryptocurrencies, we've seen a lot of biometric cryptocurrencies where they come and scan your iris. Because when you talk about data is not simply your name or your email address. This iris is also data. Your fingerprint is also data. So where are you putting this information? Especially in the age and era where we have, nations, forgive me, but nations like China that are building all these biometric systems. They're the ones that are supplying us with surveillance cameras that are on the roads. They're the ones that are giving us all the phones. These are people that are building data systems, to continue surveying and learning, what our data behaviors look like. So that's also your data. There's an app that kept making rounds years ago called the Face app, where you would put your face and see, how will I look when I'm 50 years old? What you're giving out is your data, right? Then there's what we call metadata. A lot of us take pictures in our homes and with our children and all these things and post in online spaces, not recognizing that when you upload a picture online, pictures have metadata. Sometimes they can show what type of phone that you used to take the picture, when the picture was taken, and your location, right? So if someone wanted to get this information about you, they would simply download the picture, put it in the metadata app, and extract all this data, right? And in a minute, they will know what your home location is, what phone you use, and all these details that could put you in danger. Then earlier on, I talked about the health diary apps, the menstrual apps, the mental health apps, the fitness apps that we use. Please check out how much data these apps access. Now, to close this off, let me talk through the principles of data protection and privacy that we need to pay attention to. One is accountability. Be accountable to the data subject for the personal data you collect and process, right? Number two is lawfulness. Collect and process data lawfully and legally, right? Collect and use data for the reason that you collected it. If you're collecting data for a certain activity, you don't have the right, and someone can sue you if you decide to use it for another activity. Because I gave an example, if Yvonne collected your data as volunteers, and then before you know, you're receiving an SMS from Yvonne telling you that he has a thrift shop, an Instagram page that you need to check out. But this is not the reason you gave Yvonne your data, right? So lawfulness. And then minimality. A lot of us, when we are collecting this information, we collect unnecessary information. You're asking people their grandmother and how much salary they earn. You're asking people how many children they have. Why do you need this information? collect only the information that you need to use. For you to collect all this information, next of kin and all these things. So as a data subject, you have a right to say, I can't give you this data. I'll ask me, unless you tell me why you're using this data. And this is something you should be able to tell to civil society organizations, research, governments, but also being able to, this platform is requiring a lot of data, which is why we continue to see a lot of platforms being shunned by different people. We see people moving from Twitter to Blue Sky for different reasons, but some of them could even be data that there's control. I can't decide what content to look at. So all these things. Then retain personal data for period authorized by law. Data is going to be used. Then quality, ensure quality of the personal data collected, processed, or held. Okay. Then security, observe security of the personal data to prevent abuse, loss, and risks. And then transparency. If at any point the reason for you collecting this data changes, please inform the data subjects. And I know a lot of us have signed up for certain things, and once in a while we receive a message saying your data is going to be deleted, or we would want to hold your data for more time. So ensure transparency and participation of the data subject in collecting, processing, use, and holding of this personal data. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Felix.
That's a good question.
Who is a data subject?
Who is a data subject? It's you and me. We are the data subjects, people whose data is collected by the governments, whether it's through census, whose data is collected by these big tech companies when you're signing up for you are the data subject. And you're the most important person in the data ecosystem because it's your data that is used by governments to do planning. It's your data that is used by all these big entities to make money and adverts and make money off you. I keep using the statement that if you're using an application for free, you're the what? You're the product, right? So if you're using Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp for free, you're the product because WhatsApp is using your data to sell to advertisers or to make money, and so you're the data subject. And what we've been advocating for is equitable data governance ecosystems that we should, as data subjects, we should be able to get some sort of value out of our data. It is hypocritical for people to keep collecting our data only for us not to even get basic services, right? So there's this census data, and I read an article a couple of months ago where it said that we are a very, very researched community as Africa because we collect a lot of data, but still people don't get to see the benefit of what this data is being used for. So to answer your question, Yvonne, you are the data subject, I am the data subject, because it's my data that forms a lot of this big data ecosystem that exists in. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Philippe. We can take one more question. If you have a very pressing question, please raise up your hand before we shut down the training. We can take one more question. Samuel, we can hear you. Please go ahead and speak. You can excuse yourself from the background noise.
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to commend the organizers of the training. My name is Adewale. I'm a journalist. And so when he said, I'm talking to the speaker now. When he said our cameras, we need to block our cameras, what does it mean? Can he explain on that? What does it mean? Is it the cameras on our phone, the cameras on our laptop? How do we block them?
All right, thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you, Samuel, for that question. So what I meant with that is that in the spirit of surveillance and monitoring us in this digital age that we thrive in, these are some of the ways that hackers and people that are surveilling us that might try to hack into our phones. So a lot of us who spend the day sitting on our laptops, because even the camera has an aspect of a voice and even video. So you need to pay attention to whether the light on your camera is lighting, right? But also, it's best practice that you have something to cover your camera at all times in case you've been jeopardized. And I gave you an example that on my camera, I have something. If my camera is not in use, I turn this on, right? I cover my camera that even when someone compromises my laptop, they won't be able to surveil me through my camera. We've seen that the camera is, and I'll give another example in Uganda here during COVID-19, because the government was tracking COVID patients. Now there's an app that was required for people to download, and then the government would send you a notification if there was a COVID patient in your area for you to pay attention or to keep yourself safe. Now, what we didn't know, and a lot of us didn't know, is that when you downloaded that app on your phone, the app would automatically get access to your camera, right? So a lot of people were surveilled through their cameras without actually knowing, because if you give permission to an application to access your camera, then it means they have access to it and they can always, see what you are doing if they wanted to. So we've seen in a lot of scenarios, people have been hacked and surveilled through their laptop cameras or even phone cameras, right? So this is why I was saying, for laptops, try to cover your camera at all times. When you have an option, you can use like a cell tape or something that might not spoil your camera, or even there's these camera closers that you can always get at like electronic shops. For the phone, please make sure that for applications that don't really need to use your camera, you turn off the camera aspect in the settings. That's what I meant, Samuel.
All right, a round of applause. We have come to the end of this very interesting, training. It's been, a lot of learning for me. I've learned so much. My note is full, and it has been a very impactful session, and I bet everyone here had the same experience. Please, let's celebrate our facilitator again, Philip, who is the programs director at Policy. He joined us today from Uganda. Philip, thank you so much. We really, appreciate this session, and I'm very sure that for everyone that come across these resources, even after this training, they are going to find the training very, very useful and insightful. Thank you everyone for joining.